Hi everyone, Father Joe O'Brien from St. Mary's in Coxsackie and St. Patrick's in Ravenna, and here today with news about reintroducing the cup, the blood of Christ, in our celebrations. And it's such exciting news. We've seen just in recent months the COVID pandemic beginning to wind down a bit. Signs of COVID have been less and less evident, and restrictions, public health restrictions, have been eased in recent months. With that in mind, parishes are starting to reintroduce the blood of Christ, and we are going to start doing that here at St. Patrick's and St. Mary's starting this weekend, which is the solemnity of the body and blood of Christ. And folks, just a little bit of catechesis because it's been 3 years since we've been celebrating the Eucharist in both forms. Just a bit of a reminder that going back to the earliest generations of the church, they would follow the words of Christ. Take and eat, take and drink. People received the body of Christ and the blood of Christ and did so for centuries. Near the turn of the first millennium, mostly because of the experience of disease and a lack of good public health back in those days, people stopped receiving from the cup. The cup was less available and it fell into disuse for some time. It was only, say, with the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s, we have drawn from the words of the Constitution of the Sacred Liturgy, one of the key documents of the Council, the reintroduction of the cup back in 1963. And what's the phrasing I want to give to you here? Recognizing the importance of the use of sign in the celebration of the liturgy and reflecting on the institution of the Eucharist within the context of a meal and a sacrifice, the Second Vatican Council called for the reintroduction of the distribution of communion in both forms in the 1963 Constitution of the Sacred Liturgy. In fact, there's a phrase they draw from that appears in our missal, the part of the missal that I read just for background when we're preparing for Eucharist. Holy Eucharist has a fuller form as a sign when it takes place under both kinds. For in this form, the sign of the Eucharistic banquet is more clearly evident and is a clear expression that is given of the divine will that shared with us to show a new and eternal covenant ratified in the blood of the Lord. It draws a connection between the Eucharistic banquet here at our table and the banquet we will share in the kingdom of heaven. Body and blood. Jesus telling us to take and eat and take and drink. This is where we are. So folks, we're ready to reintroduce this. What will you see on weekends at Mass? Well, you're so used to seeing the cup that I use, the chalice, and when the gifts of bread and wine come forward, you see us pouring, say, the wine into the cup. On the weekend, you'll start seeing the cups that are brought out to the altar for the Eucharistic ministers to use. You'll see wine being poured into the cup that I use, and some water. And then you'll see the wine being poured into the cups that the Eucharistic ministers will use to distribute the blood of Christ to you in just a few minutes. At the conclusion of the Eucharistic prayer, we enter into the communion rite, and we're getting ready to share the body and the blood of Christ. Folks, come forward down the main aisle as you so often do. The ministers of the body of Christ will be standing right in the center aisle. And then, as you turn to both sides, you'll be able to walk over to where the minister of the blood of Christ is, and they will offer you the cup. Now, let me offer two quick thoughts for folks with needs. First of all, for my friends who have gluten sensitivities or have celiac disease and are unable to share in the body of Christ because in the post form, the wafer form, they can't take the gluten. Folks, remember, we have poured into the cup only the wine, which becomes the blood of Christ when we consecrate that in Eucharistic prayer. There is no other substance in there. You will be able to share in the cup, in the blood of Christ. That's just the blood of Christ and only the blood of Christ. So please feel free to share in the body, share in the fullness of the Eucharist that way. And also, a few folks have asked me about the practice of taking the body of Christ from the minister and then walking over and placing it in the cup to receive the blood of Christ that way. Folks, we don't do that. Let me tell you what's going on there. As Catholics, we receive the body of Christ. The body of Christ is presented to us, communicated to us. We receive the body of Christ. We receive the blood of Christ. By going over and doing the action of taking the body of Christ and placing it in the cup, we are, say, communicating ourselves when really we're called to receive it from our minister. So, folks, please receive the body of Christ, then walk over and then consume the blood of Christ. Okay? Also, if you find that you're taking the body of Christ and placing it in the cup, then you're introducing some gluten, you're introducing some celiac issues for our friends who have sensitivities. They'll be unable to share in the cup at that point. Folks, just some things to keep in mind. We look forward to reintroducing the sharing fully of our sacrament. See you this weekend, folks, and blessings for you and for your families.